Good morning to all. My name is Jonathan Bass. I'm also a student of economics, pursuing an associate degree.
Blessed
Lovely.
morning, everyone. I'm Akwanje Robinson, a law student at the CFBC.
That's a really nice mix. All right, so Jamster, before we really get into the conversation with them today, really just want to review what's going on in the world. As it relates to investment news, it's been a very horrible October, to say the least. Markets bleeding money, and we have recorded our third straight month of reds or losses in the stock market. When we look at oil, though, we know we have that conflict in the Middle East. And this is good news for St. Kitts and Nevis. We really haven't seen that materialize in global oil prices. Crude prices are still well below the high of like $90 a barrel at the peak of the Israeli-Hamas conflict that we have. But there's no signs of that getting any better. There was a ceasefire in order to get humanitarian aid in, but that's still continuing to plague the economy. And as you know, we still have whatever is going on between Russia and Ukraine. That war is still continuing as well. We've had natural disasters. Since the Nevis, we're lucky to be spared by Tammy, so that was a good thing for us. Some of our neighbors were not so lucky. There was a lot of flooding and damage that results. So the impact on the economies, I'm yet to hear really what that is. But in Mexico, they had a devastating storm in Acapulco that really is going to need some major and significant rebuilding because of the damage that has occurred there. And the US government is really focusing on AI. AI is one of the things I want to talk to the students about today, especially how they see that we could use it in the economy. And the United States is trying to regulate it, as well as specifically how it relates AI and the use from federal employees. So will governments around the world follow suit? In the Caribbean news, great news for Jamaica. According to their Minister of Finance, they're saying that they're having their best economic performance in the last 25 years. So much so that Moody's is a rating agency, and they're looking at the government debt of Jamaica, and they just increased or improved the rating to a level of B1, which is still speculative, but is trending much closer to investment grade. So that's a strong testimony for what they're doing there in Grenada. And we had a recently concluded Caribbean and Canada summit to strengthen trade and the investments, while at the same time, the Canadian economy is going through some significant and notable losses. But we're hopeful that these types of partnerships lead to major fruition in the region. All right, in St. Kitts and Nevis, we having, and the region at large, we're having Financial Information Month. I think we're down to the last 2 days. And truth is, I haven't heard much about.
Okay, I think maybe the doctor. Okay, sounds like you may have.
Oh,
Okay.
I'm back.
Yeah,
Are you guys
okay.
hearing me?
Yeah, we're hearing you.
All right, sorry.
You kind of
Sorry,
spooked us there for a bit.
Yeah, technology. I'm not sure what's happening with my system. For some reason, it's not charging my laptop. So, let's jump right into the conversation with the students. That's all I really wanted to touch on. That's all the investment news that we've really been seeing. And we'll jump in, and then I'll get and check my system. So here's my spiel. This is my opening that I have for you guys. So I really want to thank our listeners and those who continue to chime in and on the show. And we're welcome to another episode of Money Matters, right? And Nelson Mandela wisely noted that the youth of today are the leaders of tomorrow. And I think we all can agree on that. St. Kitts have been in a region where tourism plays a monumental role in the economy. St. Kitts and Nevis have been navigating these challenges of a post-pandemic world. Our youth, with their adaptability and their digital savviness at the forefront of this transition, yet they're plagued with historical challenges, such as high youth unemployment rates in the Caribbean, and St. Kitts is no less part of that. The questions remains, though, how do our young people see their place in the economy? And how do they envision carving out opportunities in a rapidly changing landscape? Now, today we give them the floor, and we are here to hear their stories, their perspectives, and solutions for an island that is resilient as it is beautiful. So prepare for a conversation that we hope bridges the wisdom of the past and the promises of the future. So let's get started with a broad question. And I'm really thankful to have you all. And this is an open dialogue, right? So don't overthink the questions. How do you guys see the current state of our economy? And what strikes you most about it? What do you guys think?
Well, I want to touch on what you were saying about the rapidly changing environment, and especially for us, because what's to come after college. We notice that even though we are here, we're trying to pursue all these degrees, and then we come back with our bachelor's, our master's. It's really hard for the students to come back and get a job. They're asking for 3 years, 5 years experience, and I think that's kind of unfair. I think that once you place young people in an institution and they are dedicated to the work, you will see you'll see innovative ideas. And I think that there are more older people in management that kind of make that they're kind of resistant to the change that young people may have to offer. Yeah.
Okay. What about the others? What do you guys think?
To touch on the CFBC situation, another problem we face as ASGS students is the lack of opportunities, job opportunities, because we have to study these programs. Mind you, there's a diverse range of programs, but there's not a diverse range of opportunities after these programs. And for example,
give me an example. Yeah, I was going to ask that. Give me some examples.
If we
of that.
juxtapose the SGS campus to the TVEMS campus, we see that TVEMS has a lot of opportunities for students in the internship program, but ASGS doesn't have an internship program. So we find that, for example, if I'm a science student and I want to go off and gain some experience in the science field, I would be unable to do so. But in contrast to TVEMS, if I were to study timber down at TVEMS, I would be more likely to get a job.
Yeah.
I see.
And to touch on what Tukosa said also, if these companies demand us to have experience, like 3 to 5 years of experience, and most companies aren't allowing us to enter their companies with just the college degree, then how are we to enter other companies if we don't have that entry-level experience?
You know, that's such an important point, because it's something I faced when I was in your situation as well. You go to CFB after how many years in high school, you do CXC, we go to CFB, I went to AHJS as well, and I found it to be the exact same way. My colleagues that went to technical vocational side of CFBC, they were doing internships, they were learning to, especially those that were in the architecture program, right? They were actually getting a skill that they could monetize immediately if in the face of an economy that could not absorb them, like what you're describing. But I think what you're saying, young man, about the need for a well-established internship program at the CFBC, I think that's an incredible point. I'm a professor here in the US, and one of the things I always encourage my students, in fact, I just took some to a conference in Philadelphia, and my only pitch to them was internships, because that's how you connect the knowledge from the classroom into the practicality of the real world, right? And that would actually be a big boost for our economy, because then you guys know all the new technologies, you knew the new strategies, right? And then you could go out and inform those employers, and then they could get ready and find ways and unique ways to expand, etc. So I think that's a really, really good point that could have some positive economic impact.
And not only that, but in St. Kitts, we also have a crippling lack of economic diversity. And I think that ties into the brain drain And if we were to stimulate economic diversity, then I think the brain drain would decrease, because if we were to have um, other industries outside of the tourism industry and actually foster a niche for all these degrees that they send us out to study, then we will find that a lot of academicians would actually be more eager to return home than to stay outside.
I could tell you that that's absolutely true. I've been desperate to come back home, and I just couldn't find a position that would
Exactly.
absorb me, you know. So that's a really good point as well. I actually would challenge that a little bit though. I really don't think we have a brain drain. I went to Midwestern State University, and there of the OECS students that were there, no one liked to go home more than kitchens and divisions. They always were quick to go home. Now, granted, as you got more specialized into fields like mine and maybe into some science areas as well, it was a little less likely to be absorbed. But even then, a lot of people went home. Now, it contrasts our experience with brain drain to countries like Dominica, where you see we don't see a lot of Kittians and Divisions in the region traveling to other Caribbean countries for employment, for example. Yeah, some might stay in the US and Europe, etc. But I'm not sure if we really do have a brain drain.
Well, I guess it's a
What do you
matter
guys
of
think?
degree, and
It could be.
and and it's relative.
Right,
I
because
mean,
although they return, then even when they return, you find people studying a degree, and the job that they now possess when they return is totally unlike the degree that they studied.
You're absolutely correct about that. You're absolutely correct. You know, many people I know that studied criminal justice and they're teaching English.
Exactly,
Right.
that's
yes,
right.
I know
We
like
have
3 people.
Right. And we have an issue with crime, right? So this leads me to our next question, guys. In what ways do you feel the decisions made today by our leaders impact your generation specifically?
Repeat the question, please.
In what ways do you feel that decision made today by our leaders, our government, our leaders of corporate enterprises impact your generation specifically? You guys are 20 and under, and you are emerging into that world of work within the next year. And decisions are being made. Decisions are being made for example, investments and trade and economic policy, social policy.
I think I'll let Jonathan handle that question, you know?
All right then.
Okay,
Jonathan, what do you say?
what I actually say is that the biggest impact is really the lack of impact. In
Oh,
that,
wow.
over
Wow.
a long period of time, the St. economy has remained rather the same. It's a quick study I want to present. According to the World Bank, St. Kitts, our GDP in 2011 was 836, and
Mm-hmm.
10 years later in 2021, it increased simply to 86. That's a 3% increase. When you
Ah, now we come with the data, Jonathan. I love this. You came with the data, man. So say those numbers again for the listening audience. And while you do that, let's define GDP for the listening audience so people understand what
Okay.
we're talking about.
Gross domestic product is GDP. That's the overall amount that a country produces in a year. And just a repeat of the numbers, 836 in 2011 and 816. And to put it into perspective, part of some other Caribbean countries that are in the region and the similar increase and the increases they had. When you look at Antigua, they had a 29% increase. St. Lucia had a 7% increase. Dominica 10, and Grenada 44% increase over that same period of time. And when you bring it into that light, it kind of shows that as good as we think we are right now, the question is, will that quality hold true 10 years from now? Is the same level of growth that we are having now really going to sustain us in the next 10 years? Because if you look at it 10 years ago, we think it was known as the best country in the ECCU in terms of GDP per capita. And now that's that leaders are starting to decline very quickly, and other countries are slowly starting to catch up and even pass us. And it shows that, and it's one of the reasons why I stated we don't really have brain drain to other Caribbean countries, because we were that good. But in the next 10 years, if we can't keep that same pace, that may be different. We may start to see a lot more brain drain to other Caribbean countries.
Those are really good points, right? And of course, do you guys have a contrarian opinion of what the young man has just stated? Because what he said is extremely powerful. We've had 3% growth over in totality, right? Over 10 years, and that's a major concern, especially since we see here so much about the amount of revenue that has been raised by CBI. So what do you think is accounting for such little growth specifically?
Just to touch on what Jonathan said, I think they said that this year the GDP has raised to 4.5%, but I think that we need to use the resources.
That's St. Kitts Nevis?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that's the projected growth rate, yeah.
Yeah, I think that we need to use our resources that we have here to build other industries that would increase the revenue in terms of agriculture. Why can't we have a balanced landscape that is contributed to only agriculture? You put I know they're always talking about having conferences for the farmers and what's not, but do we really take it seriously? Is it just for the image?
Right.
So that I would say, so we need to use our resources to build more industries that will impact the GDP even more. Even about
Such as what? Such as what? Tell me. Such as what? What kind of industries do you think would drive that? What type of resources? And what do you guys think is the main resource that we have in St. Kitts and Nevis?
The main resource we have in St. Kitts and Nevis is land.
I'm going to challenge that. Who said that? Was that Jonathan? Akwanje? I'm going to challenge that. Who has a different opinion? What's the greatest resource that St. Kitts and Nevis have? We have an abundance of land in St. Kitts, not necessarily Nevis, because Nevis land is more private. Mm-hmm. But what is our greatest resource as a country? Because this is going to feed directly into Tikosa's point.
I would say that the greatest resource we might actually be our human resource.
Oh God, I'm so excited! Yes,
he likes that.
Yes,
we can't give him any cigars though.
No, I can't even buy them a drink. You're too young. But our greatest resource is our people. Yeah. And I think as a country, we've been independent for what? How many years? 38, 39? How many years? 40 years. We've been independent for 40 years. And I do not think we get it. I do not think our leaders understand that our greatest resource, and this is all leaders, yeah? Our greatest resource is our people. Now that we know what our greatest resource is, what are some of these industries and how could we better use this resource, this human capital resource, to improve our economic outlook that we just heard? Even though we have 4% growth this year, obviously we've declined and contracted during COVID and some other years there. So that's why we have 3% total, right? So real GDP growth could actually still be negative when we adjust for inflation. We're actually losing ground. Right. So what are some resources and industries that really focusing on human capital we could actually propel St. Kitts and Nevis forward?
Well, one of the aspirations, the government has is the cannabis industry. And I think that's a perfect niche for our human capital, because we find that a lot of individuals, citizens in St. Kitts and Nevis, are privy to cannabis, and if we provide that area for them to use their knowledge and their labor and other resources that they may possess, then that's a perfect opportunity to receive an exponential growth in economic diversity, because that market would skyrocket, in my opinion, and we have the perfect amount of land for it in conjunction with the human capital.
That's incredible. I love that. Cannabis is a good industry, but what else? So we have cannabis, and we could talk about that. But what else? What other industries do you think?
Terrance, let me just interject here, and I think you might like my approach here.
Okay.
Think about what he just asked, and consider the fact that the lion's share, or a lot of the revenue that the government is now getting, is coming from CBI. What would think about that, and think outside the box, and think about what you guys would do to diversify your economy so that the CBI doesn't have the weighting, the revenue weighting it has now.
One of the things I would think worked with the CBI is that it's actually, one, you didn't require any sort of space, because I think one of the biggest issues we have right now in St. Kitts is land for housing versus land for agriculture. And it's clashing against each other in that both housing and agriculture require the same resource. And the CBI worked in that it didn't require that same resource. And I think another industry that may thrive because of that same factor might actually be technology. When you look at companies like Microsoft, they were started in a backyard. And as I said, we have the human resources. Software engineers are going out and unfortunately they're not coming back because they don't have anything to come back to. I think if you had to try to jumpstart that industry, you might actually, one, get a lot more people coming back, and two, have an actual sustainable industry that can hold its own along with tourism and the CBI.
Facts.
Right. That's a really good response. We need to diversify economy. I think we're really moving into the same traps that we saw with sugar, right? From the 80s, 90s, 2000s.
Facts.
And then eventually we lost ground internationally with sugar in terms of cost production. Now we're seeing similar threats to our CBI program, right? We're one European Union vote from losing like visa-free access to the entire Eurozone, right? And the requirements that they're having on the CBI program, we're already hearing rumblings of loss of revenue among some players in the space. And it's now competitive because we have Grenada, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, Antigua, Dominica, all who have lowered their costs, while St. Kitts Nevis in our new quest to be more compliant and transparent, we've increased our prices and reverse course. And that's obviously going to have a negative impact. So I really agree. Cannabis, and you said it as well, IT is huge. Once we could compete on our human capital. My fear about the cannabis industry, real quick, and you guys could chime in on this, is who gets the license? Who gets the licenses? Too often we see a lot of foreign entities are going to come in and get licenses. Now, we need them for distribution, but cultivation could be local, right? I know some people like Everton Blender Delaney that goes out and he has done his research. He's put in the work into learning this space. Does Everton get the license? You know, that's the question.
But Terrance, let me ask you a question. And guys, think about this too. Aren't we gonna fall into the same economies of scale trap with marijuana that we fall into with sugarcane? I mean, we had to leave sugarcane because we can't compete with Guyana and even Florida. The guys on the average, Florida and Georgia, Alabama, where they could still grow sugarcane. Barbados. Are we gonna fall into the same economies of scale trap in terms of trying to compete in the marijuana space?
Which one of you want to explain comparative advantage and absolute advantage?
I would like to chime in. What I would say is that we could look into what can separate us from those other countries, whether we do it medically, find medical ways that we could help one another. So it really depends on those aspects and how we could compete with those other countries.
Terrance, they are so on point, right? I can't understand it.
Because, as you said,
I'm impressed.
Our greatest resource is our human capital, and us as Kittitians are very creative and innovative people. So that's where our job comes in, to diversify and make us stand out from the other large competitors.
Yeah.
Because
once we give it,
you're absolutely right.
To do it, I think that we could do it.
Because we could also use our size as our advantage and other resources that we possess,
I'm glad you guys said that because Terrance, here's a quick thing. This is something I've always talked about, and no one listens to me. I've always said that, given our small size, we can find ways. Think of Blue Mountain Coffee in Jamaica. Granted, Jamaica is much larger than St. Kitts, but I've always said, why can't we grow a variety of
And I feel like
a small boutique variety of
we could
coffee,
use our culture as
right,
our advantage,
and we sell it at a premium. We could grow some tea here.
because we find that
Call it Liamiga tea,
exactly
Liamiga coffee,
we don't
and
use
sell it at
we don't
yeah.
use our heritage and culture to
Thank
the
you.
greatest advantage as we can. Because if you look at Jamaica, you could go anywhere around the world and ask anyone what's Jamaica, and they would know what Jamaica is. So I feel like we could harness that potential
Exactly.
as Kittitians, especially in the cannabis industry.
Yeah, so the reason why I segued, and Tikosa is right, and I can't pronounce that name.
I don't know if
But
you
the
guys
point-
gonna take any calls. We have 2 calls coming in. And this is a good time to let the listeners know it's 10:29. We have the illustrious Dr. Terrance Martin. It's Money Matters, and it's brought to you by First Federal. You're gonna take calls? It's up to you.
Yeah, let's take a call.
Okay.
Don't mind.
So let's take a call. Okay. That one dropped out, but as soon as we have any more, I'll let you guys know.
All right. Okay. So, like, I think the comment on the cannabis, we can specialize, right? We could develop a comparative and advantage in that space. So let's say our main focus is medicinal and we push the research aspect. We have a lot of notable scientists that have come out of our country that are still in the diaspora because, to the point, brain drain, right? There's not a space for us, but maybe we create that space, right? We create incubators. We already have a very widely popular product, if we're thinking about the agro processing piece of it, in that drink, I don't want to call the name, right, as an endorsement, but there are a number of them, and they're selling thousands of bottles of that product. Okay, how do we move to the next step? And when people visit our shores during music festival and carnival, we export it. That's the next step. I keep telling people, once we develop a business, St. Kitts and Nevis cannot be your only market, not in this day and age, right? And although we might not be able to be as competitive with, say, the Guyanas and the Jamaicans and even St. Vincent on size, what we have is the quality of our soil, which we could have our own strains of cannabis that could give us that competitive advantage. And to your point, Jams, it could be premium product, right? We try to cast ourselves as a luxury tourism market. St. Kitts, we're not luxury tourism market. We're middle income tourism market, okay? That's just fact. Right, Nevis is closer to being a luxury tourism market. Anguilla is a luxury tourism market. We are not a luxury tourism market, but we could be a premium cannabis market. We could be the go-to market for IT solutions in the entire region. We have Tishan Thomas, and Winston Martin. They developed an IT company right out of CFBC, and they've been in business over 10 years. They're thriving. All right. So we need to cultivate that environment a lot more. I have a question for you guys. How do you feel? Do you believe that the current educational system prepares young people for the adequate challenges in the future, the adequate economic challenges in the future, that is? No. Do you think our educational system prepares you?
No, it does not. I wonder, I was at home and I was telling my mom that, I'm in school and most of the time it's just remember this, remember that, remember this, prepare for exams, pass this, but we're not having that adequate training where we are prepared for the future and the world of work and everything else that has to come with it.
Especially financial literacy.
Yeah.
Don't even get me started on financial literacy because I have a doozy with the current government that Anyway, yes, that's another show. Go ahead. What else? How else do you feel like you're unprepared for the economic challenges that we would face in the future in our system? It's all knowledge retention, right? But what about the application? Do you feel in your classes in ASGS that you're getting that application as, say, your counterparts in TechVac?
Can you repeat?
do you feel like it's just the same question, right?
Not
So
really.
continue to
Not
expand.
really, because as the course said, in my opinion, we're just studying to pass keep, honestly. Like, we can't even put the knowledge to use and actually use it practically and understand it and put it out into the world, actually cement it in our minds, and use it to our advantage, not just use it to get CAPE subjects to go off to another university to struggle.
Yeah.
I understand.
But just to chime in, like, I am actually running for student government right now, and that's an issue that we picked up on the ASGS division. So hopefully, if we get elected, that's something that my party would love to implement, providing internship programs for ASGS students, especially those who want to further their studies and need a job placement where it complies with the course that they want to do.
Right.
Okay,
You know,
let's. We have a call. Oh, you wanted to?
Go ahead, Jamster. We can take
Okay.
the call.
Money Matters. You're on the air.
Good day. Really good discussion, I must say. I was hoping that your panelists, whoever brought up the thing about that being the biggest resource, would have challenged whoever challenged him on that, in the sense that, yes, it is a cliche to say that our people are the biggest resource, but there are lots of countries that have a lot more people than us, and they're in a worse condition than us. I think we could split hairs and say it's the quality of our human resource which actually counts.
Yeah.
Okay, which of course leads into the question that you're asking about the quality of our
Educational
education
system.
and training system. Okay, I like the data that was brought about the growth rate, because I think we were getting a little too complacent in us feeling that, well, we were on top in the OECS, whereas the others was desperately trying to catch up and pass, right? And we have to take note of that. Okay, stop being so self-congratulatory and boasting and that sort of thing, and work and get down to work. And the last thing is yes, we need to diversify, but at the same time, we know whole countries, let's say Bermuda, Bahamas, for instance, have managed to maintain themselves on just that one industry of tourism, essentially. Okay? And so we should not abandon it. I think it's probably more resilient than we think. Maybe the same thing can be said about the CBI, because as long as there are hotspots in the world, trouble in the world, people are going to always go after a second citizenship, regardless. Okay? And so even as we talk about diversification, and we did have some measure of it, because we had at least agriculture, tourism, and light manufacturing, and financial services all going at the same time. It's just that we let, for instance, manufacturing to just fall off. Yes, we know the financial stuff is under pressure, and we still have to get our act together back into the agricultural sphere. Okay, right? So, but really good discussion, and it's good that we have young minds thinking about these things, because I think that's one of the unfortunate things, is that we seem to end up in this cycle of just doing things the same way. And it's young people with energy and fresh ideas and innovation. I think that's going to make a difference. Okay, then.
That was a really good comment by that caller. Do you guys want to chime in on what the caller said?
I think he misunderstood us when we said diversify.
Yeah.
I think he interpreted it as we should abandon the already current industries we have, but diversify means to introduce new ways. So we're not suggesting that we abandon the already present industries, but we introduce new ones.
And not all, right?
Right.
And actually, let's extend. We could also diversify within a space. For example, I am not a fan of the fact that in our tourism product, we focus so heavy on cruise tourism.
Exactly.
My research shows cruise tourism have very little impact. Yes, we have 1 million tourists that come to our shores. We get a head tax per tourist, and some of them go on tours, but the vast majority do not. Right. And yes, there's a direct impact, but nowhere near the impact that we would have in, for example, stay over tourists. So if we think about diversification within tourism, to your point, we could then look at how can we attract more investors. We've heard about Six Senses supposed to come, Ritz supposed to come, all these hotels supposed to come, and they never come. But yet they're popping up in Dominica, they're popping up in Grenada, they're popping up in St. Vincent and Antigua. So what it is that we're not doing within our pitch to these investors to attract them to our shows that these other countries are doing, so we could get more stay over tourists. And then on top of that, yes, we have JetBlue start in November, and that's just the northern hemisphere, right? We're still targeting US, UK, some Europe, but what about South America?
Thank you.
Right? What about South America, who has opposite seasons? So we could really pursue year-round tourism. I haven't heard us, trying to get Avianca to our shores, and Avianca is one of the main players in Central and South America. I haven't heard us trying to get some of those other airlines that would come from south up. And I just think wealth is all over the world now. It's just not in the US.
And Doc, actually, a few months ago, and I actually sent this article to someone at the ministry, and I don't know if they saw it, but there was this article which said that the largest growth in tourism arrivals, like huge, I think it was like 40-something%. It was from South America, and I actually I actually sent it to someone. I don't remember who it was, but I sent it to someone tourism adjacent for them to. I honestly don't think these people even pay attention to this stuff.
And I don't know. But I was just in Dominican Republic, and I was at the hotel, and I was surprised at the amount of non-English speakers. They were speaking Spanish. They didn't come from the US. They were from Central and South America in the DR, right? And then when I'm at the airport and I'm leaving, I'm looking at the airlines, and they're all coming out of Cartagena. They're coming out of Bogota. They're coming out of Quito. You understand? They're coming out of Lima. They're coming from Belize and so on. That's how we start to diversify even within space. Even within the CBI space, we have opportunities there to restructure our approach, maintain transparency, but don't lock ourselves out of the market space, and so on.
We have another call. Let's see. Money Matters, you're on the air.
Okay, good morning, gentlemen. How are you?
Hi, how are you, Carl?
Yes, good morning. Good morning. I think this is an excellent topic. Very, very informative and educational. I would just like to lend my suggestion to, basically, I believe the education system is one of the fundamental challenges that we have over the past, since in the 80s, just after the sugar. As you might recall, earlier in your conversation, you talked about the brain drain.
Mm-hmm.
We had a problem here back then, where a number of the trained persons, the person that did the journeyman certification at the factory, they actually migrated to Canada and beyond, England and the United States, as a result of the training that they received from a trade and technical standpoint. That has never been followed up. We are not here to empower our people to independence. We are more or less focusing on the service industry, and the risks are tremendously higher than in the service industry. And I'm not knocking them, but I'm saying that one of the things that I thought was really lacking is not having that balance, whereby we promote manufacturing, we promote the trade through our education system, where we get the machinists, mechanics, the plumbers to join us to some kind of scale where these guys will be really looking at applying for outsourcing opportunities around the world. Especially in the past 10 years or so, since China economy is kind of going down, a lot of the manufacturing that used to come out of China is now being a shortage. And a lot of the developing countries are looking for outsourcing some of the work because of the high cost of labor and taxes. So I believe one of the areas that we should have been focusing on is training some of our young people in the trades. Get them knowledgeable, get them to be au fait of what's really the opportunities there in the trade business. Because when you have a trade, you're independent. You're not dependent on the ships coming in here.
Absolutely right.
And a hurricane come or some other kind of social unrest come, and then we have a problem. When you have a trade, you're more independent. And I believe that is the skill area that I believe is really has left behind. This is something I think the overall education system, whether it's academic and how many subjects you have, 25 subjects, and we're doing great. We don't need 25 subjects to live.
No,
I'm real of degree, and I know a number of my colleagues, a number of my friends in North America that has done well from the training they get at the sugar factory. That is the area that I think enough focus, enough funding, enough training has not been done. I really want to echo that. I believe that's an area where our young people are not gravitating to, and that also works in conjunction with agriculture. You know, so it's a sort of win-win-win. You know, everybody working together, then we can go out and tender for a lot of projects, a lot of manufacturing needed. I can tell you that my background in industrial engineering. So I can tell you, I can make that mention to you, whereby I believe that in the area that there's a shortage, period, especially in the region. Ships used to come in here and really going to the factory to get the machinery for the parts made. We lost that. And you know how the oil country to the best in my knowledge that does that. So these are the skill areas that I really believe that.
Terrance,
Yeah,
facts.
Thanks.
Fact scholar. Yeah, I've heard the stories, and I'm always open mouthed when I hear these stories. My uncle used to work at the factory, and he used to talk about people who used to come from Antigua and other islands come here to get parts machined at the circuits. Yes, I was shocked. I was like, what? I mean, like precision parts, right? Like metal parts for like tractors and big pieces of machinery and stuff. I was like, really? And some of these guys are still around.
You know, we have to find balance in the things that we do. And to that point, the caller's point, especially, and the first caller's point, this is what I'm talking about, investing in our human capital, right? Because it doesn't just have to be service focused. It doesn't have to just be these degrees, but the technical courses. I used to do wealth management. I had my own firm. And one of my clients was a welder. And Jamster, this man made $300,000 a year, US dollars a year, working on oil rigs. And now with Guyana, for example, going into oil exploration, well, what if we had a group of welders, talented, and they could have been the ones going to Guyana and doing those tasks? That would have been amazing, instead of us bringing in people from the US and from Europe to do the work. Right, so we need to find that balance in our system. So I have a question for the panel, right? Unless you guys want to comment on what the caller said.
I wanted to ask him about that. Yeah, go ahead. Like carpenters, that type of stuff. What do you guys think?
I think it ties into the point where Dr. Terrance said that our greatest resource is our quality of human capital, and we find that a lot of individuals within St. Kitts have those capabilities, those hard skills, but they just don't have anywhere to use them to that great magnitude, like the Guyanese or the other countries where you would have mentioned. And if we just provide that niche for them, then I think that's an opportunity for exponential growth for them.
Yeah. So we have so much.
Man, I need to meet you. I really want to meet you. Tikosa, let's set it up. When I come home, I need to meet this young man. I need to shake his hand.
You don't want to shake mine too?
I'm gonna shake yours. Yes, but you know what I mean. You were saying something.
Oh, and also I think that if we provide that niche, we would also curb a lot of the gang involvement, because we find that a lot of these gang members may be very skilled in those areas, and if we provide a niche for them to come off the streets and use those skills to make money and just practice a trade, then we would also foster that.
Oh, I have such a big grin on my face now. I know you guys can't see me, but one of my favorite quotes ever is this. It was from a former president. I think it was Herbert Hoover. Blessed are the young, blessed are the young, for they shall inherit the national debt. Blessed are the young, for they shall inherit the national debt. So my question to you is, if you were in a position of power, what's one change that you would implement to better the economy for future generations? If you were in a position of power, what's one change you'd implement to better the economy for future generations? For me, I'll start. Financial education, financial literacy. It's a national crisis. Let me say that again. It is a national crisis. And anyway, that's another show. All right. So we will really push for financial education because that's how we create wealth. That's how we create opportunity. That's how we navigate successfully in the economy. What about you, Tekosa? And then I want to hear from the other two young men.
That's a great point, Dr. Terrance.
For me, it would just be enhancing the educational curriculum, as I have said before, the adequate training that we need that is gonna, as Akwanja said, contribute to economic diversity, put the people in different industries that would generate economic wealth in the future.
I like that answer. What else?
I think a big part of it will be leaning into the entrepreneurial side of the economy, because as much as 20s and under are important, I feel like there's a lot of people, even on the young 30s, that may be mature enough to really push the economy in terms of entrepreneurship. I feel like our entrepreneurship thing is very bland, to say the least, in that many times people are coming up with these same businesses over and over again.
Right.
And nowadays, when I hear someone say they start a business, it's generally a food business or clothes.
Yeah. And if you start a business in Sinkers, you find that you receive so much immediate competition, then
Exactly.
your business has no opportunity to thrive.
Exactly, because they always
I dare say that the majority of our small businesses are not really businesses. They're monetized hobbies. But that's actually another conversation too. But any last one, I don't think, who answered? Which one of the males didn't answer? What's that one change that you would do?
I feel like the change I would make is to foster youth leadership. I find that a lot of leaders tend to be older for some reason, because maybe we feel like only senior individuals have the wisdom and the opportunity and the capability to lead. But if you just give us youth a chance to lead, then you would realize the capability we have. Sometimes we even have more capability and intellect than those in the leadership positions.
Preach.
Yeah,
Preach.
I agree.
And I just feel like there's a lack of youth leadership, and the only time we get to lead as people is when we are older. And if we just give youth that opportunity to lead, then we may see some exponential growth, that well-needed growth. And maybe us in Sinkers need to give youth a chance to lead, and then we would see the change that we actually want to see.
Listen, Jamster, I think we need a part 2 of this show, right? Because these students are absolutely phenomenal. So listen, that leads me to a question, and I agree with you completely. When I was your age, I was doing a bunch of youth affairs things, trying to get the National Youth Council started, right? A national youth policy. And 20 years later, we still don't have one.
Exactly. Because
right?
they just
It's
see us youth as inferior.
Yeah.
Young man.
but Terrance, I want to push back on your idea that brain drain isn't a thing, because it's a relativism thing in the sense that you might say brain drain is not really a problem because only 500 people left, as opposed to it could be 1,000 or 1,500. Or think about all the people who've gone out there for decades. I have guys I went to school with who work at GE and Corning and DuPont and all these places.
So let's have a real conversation.
What if these people, Microsoft and all this kind of stuff.
I agree. Listen, let's have a real conversation as to why people might stay out. And the reason why I don't think there's a drainage is because the economy has nothing to absorb them. And that's why there's no drain. Now, if we have something to absorb them, then fine. And they're not coming back, then that's different, right? So we've missed something.
So
but
like
the economy has not diversified far enough in order to actually absorb them. And we kind of run out of time here. But the real reality is money. We don't pay nobody no money. Okay? Our salaries are low.
Right.
People are underemployed, meaning their salaries are low. Inflation far outpaces the wage growth in the country. And we've been talking about wanting to have a minimum wage, and you guys could chime in. What St. Kitts and Nevis need is a livable wage. Because every time I go on Facebook and I see somebody advertising a one-bedroom unfurnished apartment, it's 500 US, 600 US, when the reality is somebody on minimum wage probably isn't taking home $1,800 a month. So how do you then pay for housing? By definition, right? You are economically poor when your housing cost takes up more than a third of your income, right? You're economically poor. So here's a question, and to the point. Is that Jonathan? Who's the young man on the end? Jamster, like
in the glasses, right?
On your left. Not the one in the glasses,
yeah.
the other one.
Yeah, the lawyer. Yeah.
I'm a conjure.
That's the law student? Okay,
Yeah.
Look. Here's my final question to you guys in our last 5 minutes. And I'm really going to have you guys back again. I've been thoroughly impressed. I'm grinning. I'm excited. Here's a question for you, right? What's one thing about the economy that you wish older generations understood better? What is one thing about the economy that you wish older generations understood better? Don't be afraid to say it, you know. You could text me. I'll say it for you if you're afraid to say it. Think about that.
And don't pull your punches.
It depends. I think that you'd probably have to be specific because you just don't want to go off the topic.
No, okay. So let's think about the economy at large, right? So what do we have in our economic system? We heard GDP is basically flatlined, right? Some growth, but not consistent growth upwards. And I really appreciate you bringing in that statistic. However, some older people love to maintain the status quo. I'll give you a specific example, right? We have a stock exchange in St. Kitts and Nevis. Do you guys know that? It's based in Bastia, the Eastern Caribbean Securities Exchange, right? So for the past 15 years, there's probably been like a 50% growth over that time. But if you were to invest in National Bank or TDC today, October 30th, 2023, and let's go back a year from now, a year into the future, October 30th, 2024, the share price would not move. Meaning nobody's buying, nobody's trading. Okay? So what's one things I would love for the older generations to know? Technology matters. Education matters. To your point that you said, changing the way in which we teach matters. All right. So those are the kind of conversations I'm thinking. We can no longer maintain the status quo. Why is it all these advisors, 60s, already retired and then being brought back to advise?
Lack of youth leadership.
Right. And no, I'm 39, so by some definitions, I'm not a youth. However, I know I could make my contributions, right? So you don't push me out of it, right? So, but it's a very good point. How is it then in a world that's fast changing, digital technology, social media, where what these people learned, and mind you, they have a place, but they've already done their work, go rest. And let somebody else get an opportunity to come back and contribute and move the economy forward. That is why the economy hasn't moved.
Exactly.
There's no innovation.
Yeah, what they need to understand is that change is okay. it's okay to change and times change.
Yeah.
And that's what they need to understand. They need to understand that times change and things change because the old way of things has no place in the new time. So they just need to be open to change and let go.
Listen.
They're old. They're just antediluvian way of doing things.
Oh,
Some of them,
what?
I would think some of them
Oh,
are
shots
even
fired.
afraid of how rapidly the technological environment is moving. Most of the older heads,
Right.
really
And maybe some of them are just ashamed to admit that they don't understand it.
and how to work
Yeah.
this stuff. Like I was watching with Apple. You see when they introduced the iPad, right? The target market was mainly, I think, from 8 and up into the teens. And then after doing the research, there was like, why the older generation buying more of the iPads than the younger ones? And that's because I guess they more understand the iPad better. So even if they want to introduce devices that the older heads would understand, because some of them are resistant to the change because they're afraid. They don't know how to work the devices, or they're afraid of technology.
And
So if that's
that's
something
interesting.
they could look into, and they will be open to the change.
To answer the question, I think one of the big things I would want to say is I feel like the big thing is the use of technology and also the style of marketing. In that, I feel the method of marketing that is done right now in sync it is antique to say the least, and it draws back into the point that you mentioned regarding even the fact that we don't have any South American planes coming here simply because we don't market ourselves to them.
Right.
Yeah.
That we don't actually go out and try to speak with them because our mindset is that we have American Airlines, we have British Airlines, so we're not actually pushing further to
And
further change.
we're focused on markets in the global north.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
true.
Well, I feel like
Exactly.
marketing should be span around the globe, you know?
You guys want to hear something
Okay,
funny?
Terrance, we have to wrap
I know
now
we're
because-
running out of time.
yeah,
Yes. I'm going to wrap up now, but I want to jump on that marketing thing.
Socrates,
every-
Socrates has me at gunpoint right now.
Everybody that has been trained in marketing that studied in the US or Europe, they were trained to market with a white male gaze. Think about that. Everybody that has studied marketing in the US or Europe in the last 2 decades, they have been trained to market from a white male gaze. Look,
That's true.
guys, thank you so much for coming on. Takosa, we'll set up some time to bring you guys back. I love this.
problem.
And I want to meet each and every one of you when I come. I'll take you to lunch or something to that effect because I want to get to know you guys. This is Money Matters. Jamster, you're brilliant as always. My name is Dr. Terrance Martin. I'm your host. Let's spread the word of the show. We're having really dynamic and important conversations. We're involving young people. Next week, the emotional side of money. We're hoping to have Zara Jacobs, a psychologist there at home. And that should be a great conversation. Remember, it takes financial knowledge to know that you're making financial mistakes. Have a great week.
Okay, great.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yep, thanks for
Thanks
that.
a lot.
Have a great day.